Hi, everyone. This is Brett Ayler, Dr. Ayler. Today, we're going to be talking about the five pillars of health. Actually, it's an introduction to the five pillars of health. And I believe this is probably one of the most important discussions we can have. I think that when we talk about our life and about our vitality, our health, I believe that how we maintain that health, how we maintain that vitality is so important to everything that we do. And I believe that that is something that we should be talking more about in terms of your healthcare in general. So when we talk about our five pillars of health, the concept is what is health? So if we ask you, is health, is that just the absence of a disease? Is that your laboratory study saying that, geez, you have a normal blood sugar, at least in the normal ranges, you have a normal liver function test, that your blood pressure is now medication. Is that what health is? Health is goes beyond that. Health goes beyond simply the absence of disease. It goes into that concept that we discussed before, that sense of vitality, that ability to have our good memory, our mind, our cognitive function, being able to make simple calculations in our mind and to remember things, the ability to have some intimacy, have that sexuality that continues to be with us for the rest of our lives. And in addition to that, our ability to be able to be mobile, to be able to do the activities. So when we think of health, we look at this picture and we see that an individual's golfing. We see that there's an individual that is going out on a hike. That's vitality. As we advance in our age, we want to be able to see our life living that vital, energetic, happy life. We want to be able to go dancing. We want to enjoy our life. And that's what gives us value, I believe. It's not just the absence of a disease or taking a certain number of medications and now they say, oh, yeah, everything's in quote, quote, normal limits. But it's potentially being without the need for a medication. Is that ability to enjoy the quality of their life. And I believe that that is what health is. So whether we want, when we get older, do we have that capability, that energy, that zest to be able to go out and play with the grandkids? Or just that opportunity of doing the other things that we have in life, whether it's on a hike, and that goes from just when you're young all the way through. One of the things we often forget about is what is our purpose in life and where are we going? Every one of us is going to die. I mean, that's just the statistics out there. So when we're talking about the mortality in the United States, in 2017, we had nearly 3 million deaths a year. That's just natural. That's just what happens. And then when we look at the number of deaths that are associated with cardiovascular disease and the number of deaths that are associated with cancer in one year, in 2017, that's about 50% of the reason for our dying. Then we look down the line and we start to say, geez, what other things cause us the death? And some of those things are accidents, so non-intentional things, getting in a car accident, falling off a roof, those kind of things. And then we go into chronic lower respiratory diseases such as emphysema or bronchitis or asthma that can cause us to die. We go into strokes as another factor. And as we go down further, we get into Alzheimer's and some of the other factors that can be associated with why we die. But when we look at that, I want you to take a glimpse at it and look at those things and say, geez, which one of those factors may I have the opportunity of changing? A lot of time we talk a lot about genetics and geez, it's genetics, I'm just going to die. But that's not truly out there. There are a few conditions that genetically we're kind of set in stone. But the majority of the issues with genetics is that it simply gives us a predisposition that we could have an illness or we can have a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. We can have a higher risk of diabetes. We can have a higher risk of stroke. We can have a higher risk of potentially cancer, but it's how are we living? And that's what the five pillars of health are. The pillars of health are how do we go about changing our lifestyle, maximizing our lifestyle, maximizing the things that we have the capability of changing. So oftentimes I'll ask someone and say, geez, what are the reasons that we're dying? And then how much do you have an impact into it? Oftentimes we push everything onto the healthcare system, that we need healthcare for everyone, universal healthcare. Well, that's great. But even with universal healthcare, if we are not taking charge of our health, then we're going to be running into additional problems. For every year, the life, the lifespan, I guess, is the best way of saying it, has increased until the last 3 years. It was 78.9 years. Now it's been going down. It's 78. What you were able to live before. I'm talking about the quality of life. But if we are talking about the quality of life, how do you want your years to be? Do you want your years? This is how I want mine. I want it to go like this and then drop off. I don't want it to be the last 20 years of my life going down in this progressive decline until I'm not enjoying my life. It becomes a misery. It becomes something that I'm enduring as opposed to something that is just exciting and vigorous. And I just want to be there. So when we talk about these pillars of health, we're talking about the things that can potentially change your life. What can we do to improve our quality of life, to make our life live out a much better ranking, I guess, or a much better level for the number of years that we're going to be on this earth? So there's a poll question. I'd like you to take a look at that poll question. And that poll question, the first poll question is, do we have a healthcare crisis? Now, that healthcare crisis, the issue, the question about that, and the reason I put it there was we're very concerned about everybody having healthcare. I mean, that's been the debate for the last 20 years in terms of getting healthcare. But what are we going to do? What is the reason that we may have a crisis, either in the number of doctors or we have more and more ailments that are putting a toll onto the healthcare system? So please, if you don't mind, just dropping in an answer to whether or not you believe that we have a healthcare crisis. And if you want to put something in there, put something like, no, we don't, or yes, we do, and why do we have a healthcare crisis? What are the factors that are contributing to that healthcare crisis? The next question that I'd like you to put up, and hopefully that's been there long enough that you can put an answer in there. If it suddenly goes away, then just write something into the chat. I would appreciate that. It's kind of hard to know sometimes when we talk, there's a little delay on when we talk and when things get out there to you. So we just want to see that. So the next question, along with that consideration, is to the healthcare crisis. Do you believe or do you have any concerns that the price of insurance will get up to the point that we're not going to be able to afford it, or that the insurance companies that we have will start rationing care? So when we consider the cost of diabetes, the cost of heart disease, the cost of cancer, and we consider that our budget for healthcare is about $1 trillion per year, and then the more and more that is added onto that, when is it that it becomes too expensive? Or if we're going to lower those costs, when does it get to the point that we just can't afford it without some rationing? And I got to say, doctors aren't very good at rationing things. A doctor wants you to get the optimal care, regardless of what it is. And we're always sending letters to the insurance company and asking them to approve things. So the people that are going to ration it are not going to be the doctors. The people that are going to ration it are going to be your health insurance companies. And that's already going on if you haven't noticed, but to a degree that it really impacts you. on those healthcare systems, say that they have in Europe, that you don't get dialysis over a certain age group or etc. Do you believe that that's going to come here? And do you have any concerns about it? And the third question that is asked is, who do you believe is responsible for your health? We get a lot of information, a lot of people talk about it's a right. Everybody in the United States should have health insurance. We're not all created equal. We understand that. We know that some of us will have certain types of health issues, others will have other types of health issues. So we're not equal with when we come into the game. But the question is who's responsible for our health? Is it your doctor that's responsible for your health? Is it the insurance company that's responsible for your health? Is it the government that's responsible? And whoever has responsibility for your health, should they have the responsibility to either dictate what you do or don't do? Should they have the responsibility of potentially rationing? So if someone is paying the bill, should they have that opportunity? If you're paying the bill for your kids, they're living in your house, should you have the opportunity of telling them how they live in your house or not? So those are some interesting questions. I want you to just think about it. Write down any thoughts you have about that. I'd really appreciate it. So what we're talking about right now is, how do we change our life? How do we impact your health? Because it's my belief that we have some influence on cardiovascular disease. In fact, cardiovascular disease is, in some ways, it's bottomed out. We don't have the capability of improving the cardiovascular disease anymore because we've kind of maxed out with the medications. Although the percentage of people that die of cardiovascular disease has been relatively stable, it's starting to creep up. You may think, how am I going to influence cancer? Well, there was an interesting study that came out, and I just became aware of it when I was searching through the Journal of American Medical Association in their archives and looking at the various factors that contribute to our longevity and looking to the factors that contribute to health. They did a study, and it was an interesting study where they took a group of people. The average age was 69, and I think they had 8,000 people in this study. And they looked for 1 week at their level of physical activity. And they rated them on their physical activity. Were they sedentary, extremely sedentary, or active? And they found that the people that were the most sedentary, the highest third of the population that was very sedentary, had a twofold increased rate of cancer. Now, these were people that did not have cancer before the study started, but during the length of time of this study, which was less than 10 years, they had developed cancer and had passed away. And they found that by just increasing our physical activity, even modestly, we had some significant improvements, or at least associations. There was less significance of cancer as being a diagnosis in their future. So this is an association study. We can't say it's a direct cause and effect, but it is interesting that sedentary activities may predispose us to cancer. And we don't think about cancer as one of those things that we may have an influence on it, other than maybe our nutrition, maybe staying away from bad chemicals, but exercise? I mean, that's just incredible. So these 5 pillars of health, let's talk about the very first pillar of health. The first pillar of health is going to be on nutrition. And how many people don't believe that nutrition is important for us? And we always know that nutrition, what we put in our body, is what builds our body. It's our building blocks from what makes us healthy, what makes us vital, it gives us the energy. The problem is we're eating too many foods that don't have the right nutrients. When you eat sugar, it really doesn't have any nutritional value. It just has energy. And if we don't use that energy, it's just stored as fat. And now we start to run down that pathway in the wrong direction. So nutrition becomes an extremely important part in terms of one of our 5 pillars of health. The question is what is good nutrition? What are the foods we should eat? And are there some foods that maybe I need to eat that somebody else shouldn't eat? Or they should eat more than what I eat? And we could test some of that through some of the laboratory studies. We know that when somebody has a gluten sensitivity, they can't eat gluten. We know that when somebody has a gluten allergy, they really can't eat gluten. But did you know there's a factors or blood test called homocysteine? And homocysteine is a measure of a molecule in your body. It's called homocysteine. And if that's elevated, it suggests that we're not able to methylate well. Well, methylation is just a natural process that happens in our body. But 40% of the people in the United States may have a defect in their ability to methylate. At that, geez, these are some of the alterations we have to potentially do for this individual for their nutrition so we can prevent or have better hand at reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease, reducing the risk of Alzheimer's. So we're getting pretty far in terms of looking at these factors, but if you don't know what they are, how do you know? The next pillar of health is your digestion and your ability to remove toxins from your body. We don't think about that much. There is a lot more information out there in the literature and in the TV, and it seems like soon as something catches on the news or in advertisements like probiotics, then we get a clue about it. Even though that information has been around for 20 years, nobody accepts it. Soon as it hits the advertising rank, well, we start talking about probiotics. So our gut, our intestinal system has a variety of bacteria, and that bacteria determines our health. It determines some of the chemicals that are produced in our bodies. Those bacteria help process some of the nutrients and help make our vitamins. Those bacteria help contribute to disease. We've known for a long time that a bacteria called Klebsiella pneumonia has been associated with ankylosing spondylitis. So we don't want too much of that in our colon. And if we do, we want our digestive system to resist that bacteria getting through that thin wall into our system to potentially develop into ankylosing spondylitis. So the integrity of our gastrointestinal system is important. The health of our liver of being able to detoxify. You know, we live in this toxic environment. Years ago, we didn't have the same toxins, chemicals, pollutants that that our environment is so full of. And we want to avoid them as much as we can, but we can't avoid everything. So to improve our ability to detoxify the various chemicals we come into in that come into our body or that interface with us, whether it's pollution, etc. Our ability of our body to detoxify is very important to prevent these chemicals from causing problems to us. So that's a second pillar. A third pillar is going to be our ability to exercise. So exercise, we talked about the risk of cancer with a sedentary lifestyle. But you know the risk of cardiovascular disease if you don't exercise. And what about the risk of diabetes? What about the risk of Alzheimer's? What about the risk of what we call metabolic syndrome? What about those risks that we talked about, the mortality, all the different reasons that we die? What about exercise playing a role in those to lower our risk of dying, but also lower our chances of having a disfavorable life, of taking away that vigor, that vitality, those capabilities? Some of those things we do some restorative medicine techniques, as we talked about in other lectures. But it's also important just to maintain our muscle mass, which maintains our bone mass, which gives us the ability to get off the chair, to be able to climb the ladder, to be able to step off something without breaking a bone, without hurting our back. So exercise becomes an extremely important factor of our third pillar of health. Now, the fourth pillar of health, we may not think about it too much, but it's the restoration of our hormones. Certainly, if we have an elevated insulin level, well, that's not an optimal function. We need to have some insulin. But the problem that has come now, we talk about type 1 diabetes. We used to talk, and type 2 diabetes. We used to talk about adult onset diabetes, which meant that our blood sugar was elevated, but it wasn't because we did not have enough insulin, which was always the juvenile diabetes. They don't make enough insulin because there's an autoimmune reaction, is the common effect, that kills the cells that make the insulin. So we have to give them insulin. Now we're giving people that have adult onset diabetes insulin to lower their blood sugars, but they already have enough insulin. So we have to get lower your own body's production of insulin. And we have to do that through some of the other pillars of health that we talked about, which can include GI function, which can include our exercise, which can include our nutrition, but by gaining some control of our hormones. But there are other hormones that have a significant influence on our body that we may not be able to influence just by those factors. And those may be your hormones, such as your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone. It's been shown that when we lose our estrogen, when we lose our testosterone, we have a higher incidence of Alzheimer's disease. Studies show that when a woman has had a hysterectomy in her younger years, that she has a significantly increased risk of developing into some of those conditions. So restoring the hormones can help with that. Restoring the hormones can help with our bones. Restoring the hormones can help with our vitality. Restoring the hormones to an optimal level from however we have to do it, whether it's our sex hormones, our thyroid hormones, our insulin. Restoring that is a very important part of our pillar of health. And then the last pillar of health that I talk about in the 5 pillars of health is our stress. How do we deal with stress? And including in stress, I'm talking about sleep. So all the things that are important for giving us that vitality. How do we even know if we're stressed? And what are the different reasons that cause us stress? Could it be that we're having stress because we have GI? We might have irritable bowel syndrome. We might have an inflammatory bowel disease. We might have an autoimmune condition. Yeah, that causes stress. Well, how do we address that? How do we address your emotional stress? How do we know if you're stressed? So there's some techniques and some measurements, some cardiovascular measurements that we can do to determine your level of stress. And then we can use those levels to help you optimize to come to that point of being able to control yourself, being able to give you an insight as to where you're going. So with all these 5 pillars of health, now you know what they are. But here's that last issue. That last issue is, how do I fly the plane? You can take a book and you can read and you say, I'm going to go learn how to fly an airplane. And you can read everything about it, the center of gravity, the weight, the power of the airplane. You can understand how the airplane works. You can understand the dynamics. You can know where all the controls are. But sometimes it takes a little more than that. I mean, if it was easy, we would all do it. But there is some risk of flying the plane. And so oftentimes you need that person sitting next to you, that mentor that's going to sit next to you and help you get there. When you decide you're going to fly a plane, if you have that decision, if you made that commitment, if you say, I'm going to do what it takes, you're going to fly that plane. The same with your health. If you have that commitment, if you have that desire, if you're going to, what I believe is important, listen to the coach, listen to the mentor, you're going to get good health. You're going to know it. You're going to develop the understanding, the ability, the willingness, and that support that when things get difficult, they're going to problem solve a way for you so you can get through it. Because remember, your destiny is up to you. Your health determines your destiny. The question is, do we want to take that on or not? And when we decide that, yes, that's something we want to do, well, we're there to help you. So we have programs that can help you with those 5 pillars of health and help you with the coaching. And you know what I find out? When we look at where we are in our life and what we're doing and our motivations, every time we win, every time we succeed, that just builds more confidence. That builds a better life so that we're able to take on and handle and conquer and deal with so many more things. That's where the coaching comes in. You know, when we're in school, we have a coach. But as soon as we get out of school, and as soon as we get out of those athletics, we don't think we need a coach anymore. That may be true, but you'll have to decide that. So what I want to do is leave this open now for questions for people if they have any questions that have come up. So one of the questions is, how do you go about doing a GI detox? Well, let me tell you, our gastrointestinal system is about the lining that keeps the bad stuff from getting inside your blood system is only 1 cell thick. That's not very thick. And so if we have inflammation within that gut wall, that makes it more permeable. It's not much different than if you were in poison ivy and now your skin is weeping because you've inflamed that dermal layer, that skin, and the fluids leak through. And it allows it to become more permeable. Well, that's what happens in our gastrointestinal system. So when we're talking about a detox, what we're going to do is remove agents that may be causing any inflammation into your intestinal system. We're going to provide you agents, natural products that help coat and smooth and help heal it. And then we're going to keep you on that program for a period of time, as well as giving you support so that your body is able to detox chemicals out of your body. So in terms of that, we're going to repair. We're going to help in providing support to detoxify. And remember, detoxification is a variety of things. Our kidneys aid in detoxification. Our liver aids in detoxification. Our sweat aids in detoxification. Our gallbladder aids in detoxification. So all these factors, we want to help you develop or improve that so that we're getting rid of some of the bad. So that when we're doing better, it's kind of been said that even if you're living in the Garden of Eden, and you're eating all the great foods, but your body can't absorb those nutrients, well, we may not get the optimal value of it. And then how do you know if you're low in hormones? Well, some of it is just the feeling that you have. So if you come into the feeling and say, geez, I'm just tired, I'm fatigued, I don't have the energy, I don't know why I can't get up in the morning. I don't know why I can't lose weight. I don't know why I'm so anxious and nervous all the time. I don't know why I'm so angry with everybody. Chances are you might have a hormonal dysfunction. And so those give you the first clue. But then we test them. We do a variety of tests to see what your hormones are. And we actually test the hormone. We're not testing the precursor to the hormone. So if we're going to look at your thyroid function, we're going to look at your thyroid hormones, your T3, your T4. You might look at your thyroid antibodies and see if you have an autoimmune condition, because that's going to influence your health. And not just at your TSH. So those are some of the things that we're looking at to try to determine if you have an abnormality in your hormones, and to help us guide the program for you so you can be as healthy as you can. So another question here is, what kind of programs do we do? What are our programs? And who is able to participate in any of those programs? Well, these programs are there for you to succeed in. So if someone is going to participate in a program, we have different types of program. The most comprehensive program is the program we talk about, your 5 pillars of health. And in that program, we're going to be doing a variety of blood tests to determine what your levels are. We're going to evaluate what your diet is. And then we're going to take you through a program that includes supplements, etc., the instruction of exercise, the instruction of hormones, restoring your hormones, working with you on a detoxification or elimination diet to find out what are the right kind of nutrients that you're going to be doing, working with you in stress reduction, etc. And then we're going to do another blood test later and see if we're getting there. We're always going to follow you. And along with that, we're going to provide the coaching. But again, it's not for everyone. This is for the people that are serious about that. I oftentimes have more of an invested interest in an individual getting healthier than they are. And we need that to be this double relationship. We need that person to have just as much interest in getting healthy, to restore their lifestyle, to restore their vital function in life as I do. And if we have that and they're coachable, then they do well with a program. We do have smaller programs that are not as intense as well. So another question, what foods would you recommend cutting out? Well, that depends on your body. So number one, I'm going to recommend taking sugar out of that diet. I think that the sugar is just a lot of extra nutrients, or excuse me, a lot of extra calories without nutrients that doesn't provide much benefit to you. And I think obesity and the developing insulin resistance, etc., I think that's probably the number one food that I would look at eliminating if I can. But some of those other foods, there's been a big craze about gluten sensitivity, and do we have an allergic reaction to gluten like celiac disease, or do we just have a gluten sensitivity? And dairy and lectins and a variety of those things. And so, if I was going to say the number one thing other than sugar would probably be try at some time taking away the wheat out of your diet. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose weight, but it means, geez, you may feel better. Maybe take away dairy. But when we do it in a program, in a regimented program, in this structured aspect, by taking away certain foods and then reintroduce them, we can determine whether that food's causing your problem and how long we have to stay away from that food before we can reintroduce it into our life. Hopefully that helps. Ask another question that didn't cover it well enough. And another question, do we have a weight loss program? And they question that when they listen to the recording on our phone, we talked about weight loss programs, and we do. There's a variety of weight loss programs that we can offer. There's weight loss programs where you're taking some phentermine. There's weight loss programs where we're putting you onto a different nutritional program. One of the weight loss programs that I like the most is not necessarily a weight loss program. It's a lifestyle, healthy lifestyle nutritional program where we take you through this 12-week program. And in that 12-week program, you are given a scale, and we do some coaching with that. And this scale is a body composition scale, so that we're assessing what your percentage of body fat is, your percentage of muscle is, your percentage of water. So we can see, because one of the parts of the program is we want you to be able to exercise, we want you to do activity. And since muscle weighs more than fat, we want to see how much adipose tissue you're losing, because it's the adipose tissue that's going to cause a problem. But yes, we do have a weight loss program, but the weight loss program is more of a healthy lifestyle. How do we understand the principles? How do we get healthy? And those programs are geared toward helping us understanding and conquering that goal. So if there's no other questions, So I'm going to call it quits right now. I hope that this was helpful. I still believe that this is probably one of the most important things that we have to do as a physician. We have to bring this concept to you of how you get healthy. It's not just what the physician is doing, it's what you're doing. It's having this relationship of developing a healthier lifestyle, developing a healthier way about doing it. And sometimes we just don't know what to do. But I believe that at this time it becomes very important. And one of the things that really drew it out to me was this whole situation with the COVID virus. We know there's been a lot of deaths that they've attributed to the COVID. What I don't know is how many of those deaths were caused by the COVID, or did they die and they had the COVID? But we know that that has had a significant influence in everything around us. We're wearing masks, we're social distancing, we're doing so many things. But it's not just that we are social distancing and wearing the mask. What are the things that are talking about? I believe it's addressing those 5 pillars of health. Even on vitamin D, we find that people that are very low in vitamin D have a higher mortality rate. We find that people that are overweight have a higher mortality rate. We find that people that are keeping their blood sugars under tighter controls fare better, even if they get the disease. What are some of the factors that may make us more susceptible to developing an illness when we get around someone? How can those 5 pillars of health help us? And so I believe that for the future, for other infectious agents that may come about, because it's always been considered, geez, we've had such an increase in our longevity because we've been able to get rid of these pathogens. We have antibiotics, and very seldom do we die of an infectious disease, except like when you get pneumonia or inflammation. It's always when you're over 65, it's kind of crazy. Why is this 65 such a time mark? It's kind of like you get Social Security and then they plug you this conspiracy and now we're going to die. I don't know. But how do we get healthy? And it takes some time to get healthier. So I believe that the earlier we start on the program, the earlier we start about addressing those factors to make us healthy, we'll do better. I appreciate your time. I hope that you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it. Please send me an information about it. Next week, we were going to talk about the science behind stem cells. And to be honest, I think I'm going to have to put that off a week. We're going to send an email out. If you're interested in when that comes up, let us know. But I think we're going to put that off a week just because some other things will come up next week that are going to be holding my time. So we will put that onto the schedule after that. And then some of the other factors, hormones, how hormones affect us, etc. So if there's other topics you'd like to hear more about, please let us know and we'll get those to you. Appreciate it. Take care now. Have a great day. Bye-bye.